I keep telling myself the moment wasn't real. The part where she leaned so close I could feel her breath on my jaw, where she bit her lip the way someone does when they're trying not to say something reckless. But every time I replay it, I still hear her whisper, "Kiss me before he comes back." Her brother was in the next room, and I swear the air in that tiny repair shop never felt smaller. It started earlier that afternoon, when I was already annoyed with the day. Rain had chased half our customers away, and the ones who did show up insisted on arguing about repair estimates like I had built their broken machines myself. The smell of dust and old circuit boards clung to everything. Even the ceiling fan sounded tired. I was wiping grease off my hands when the door chimed. She walked in. Not dramatically. Not in that cinematic, hair-swaying, slow-motion kind of way. If anything, she looked like someone forcing herself to appear collected, shoulders squared, chin up, but fingers tightening around the small, cracked tablet she carried. Mid-40s, maybe a little older. There was a quiet confidence in the way she took in the room before meeting my eyes. "Is your brother here?" she asked. "My brother?" I blinked. "Oh, no. You're thinking of my coworker, Sam. He's somewhere in the back." She nodded as if she already knew that, as if she had come prepared for the possibility I'd be the only one out front. She set the tablet gently on the counter, almost like she was placing a secret between us. "It keeps freezing," she said. "I've taken it other places, but they talk to me like I'm clueless. I just want it to work." There was nothing remarkable about her words, but the way she said them, low, measured, slightly frustrated, made me straighten up without even thinking. She had a voice that made the room feel different. "Let me have a look," I said, hoping I didn't sound younger than I already looked. She watched me while I worked. Not hovering, just present. At first it made me self-conscious, the way someone's gaze can feel like an extra hand on your shoulder. But then something softened between us when I explained the issue. She listened, really listened, even smiled once, small but intentional. "You're patient," she said quietly. "Most people rush through explanations." I shrugged, pretending that compliment didn't land harder than it should have. Her brother returned before anything could tip into something strange. Sam pushed the door open from the back, carrying a box he nearly dropped when he saw her. "Oh, hey," he said. "Didn't expect you today." She lifted a brow. "You said I could come anytime." Their dynamic was familiar. Siblings who'd learned to communicate through half-sentences and sighs. She clearly ran the show between them, though she didn't flaunt it. Sam disappeared again after mumbling something about inventory, leaving the two of us in the narrow aisle between shelves. That's when it happened, the moment I can't stop replaying. She stepped closer, maybe to see the tablet screen better, maybe because the room itself nudged us together. I don't know, but the space between us shifted, became charged in a way I felt in my stomach first. "You explain things differently," she murmured, eyes flicking from the tablet to me. "How's that?" I asked. Her answer didn't come immediately. Instead, she bit her lip, barely, like she caught herself doing it, and leaned in just enough that her shoulder brushed mine. "I actually understand you," she said. Something in her tone made the room warmer. Then, from the back, her brother's footsteps echoed. Fast, getting closer. She held my gaze for a second too long. A second that felt like we both knew something was happening that shouldn't. And that's when she whispered, the line that still sits in my chest, refusing to leave. "Kiss me before he comes back." She didn't wait for my reaction. She just pulled away, composed herself, and turned toward the aisle as if nothing had happened at all. But I'm still standing here, days later, wondering why that one breath, that one sentence, shook me more than anything else this year. And why I keep waiting, hoping to see her again. I didn't expect her to come back so soon. Honestly, I'd convinced myself she wouldn't, that whatever happened between us in that half-second haze was something I'd exaggerated in my head. But 3 days later, late afternoon, when the shop was quiet enough to hear the refrigerator hum in the back, the door chimed again. She walked in slower this time. No lip biting. No leaning close. No whisper that could knock the wind out of someone. Just her, hair tied back more loosely than last time, a thin sweater wrapped around her like she hadn't slept well. "Hey," I said, trying too hard to sound casual. She offered a faint smile, the kind that looked like it weighed something. My tablet, it froze again. She set it on the counter, but she didn't step back. She stayed close enough that I could see the fine lines around her eyes. Not age, just exhaustion. The kind someone earns when they hold too much together for too long. You okay? I asked before I could stop myself. Her fingers paused on the edge of the counter. She didn't look at me when she answered. Long week, she said. Longer than it should have been. That was it. No explanation, no elaboration. She drew a small breath and pressed her lips together, like she regretted even saying that much. Emotional asymmetry, the kind you can feel even without touching. She had walls. I didn't know where mine were. I worked in silence, pretending to focus harder than necessary so I wouldn't stare at her hands. She had this gentle way of fidgeting with the end of her sleeve, rolling and unrolling the fabric. Sometimes she stopped to press her thumb into the side of her palm, like she was grounding herself. You didn't have to come back, I said quietly. That's the thing, she murmured. I didn't know where else to go. Her voice cracked, not audibly, but in the way the last word softened, as if breaking into two pieces. I looked up. She looked away. There it was, the vulnerability she didn't mean to show. She shifted her weight, one foot slightly behind the other, like she might leave if she stayed too long in her own honesty. I can fix this, I said, holding the tablet gently. I mean the device. Not. She laughed under her breath. A soft, tired laugh that somehow hit harder than the boldness of her last visit. I know what you meant, she said. But thank you anyway. Her brother wasn't with her today. Maybe that mattered. Maybe it didn't. But the atmosphere felt different, quieter, closer, dangerous in a slower way. When I handed her the tablet, our fingers brushed. Accidentally. But neither of us pulled away immediately. Her breath hitched, barely, but I felt it. You're very kind, she whispered. And for a moment, she didn't look guarded at all. Just tired. Just human. Just standing too close to someone she probably shouldn't. She took the tablet, held it to her chest, and turned toward the door. But then, right before stepping out, she paused, glanced back, and said something that stayed with me all night. You explained things differently, and I listened differently to you. Then she left, leaving the air between us humming. The night it almost happened wasn't planned. I wasn't even supposed to be at the shop that late. Sam had left hours earlier, tossing a lock-up whenever, over his shoulder, assuming no one would wander in during the storm. But she did. The rain was brutal, sideways, loud enough to shake the windows. I was halfway through counting receipts when the door pushed open and she stepped in, soaked at the shoulders, hair clinging to her cheek in uneven strands. Sorry, she said, leaning against the door as if she'd fought the wind to get inside. I didn't realize you were still open. We're not, technically. I rubbed the back of my neck. But you can stay until the rain calms down. She hesitated, just long enough for me to see the choice flicker in her eyes. Then she nodded. Thanks. I handed her a towel from the drawer. She took it slowly, fingers brushing mine. Not intentional, but not accidental either. She dried her hair in small, half-hearted motions, like her mind was somewhere else entirely. You're shivering, I said. It's nothing. But she wrapped her arms around herself anyway. There were only 2 stools in the shop, one behind the counter, one in front, so close they almost touched. She sat on the front one, letting out a breath that sounded like she'd been holding it since she walked in. For a while, neither of us spoke. The storm filled the silence. Her damp sweater carried the scent of rain and something faintly floral, something warm. Then her phone buzzed. She looked at the screen, and something shifted in her expression. Not anger, not fear. Something quieter, heavier. Everything okay? I asked. It's just, she sighed and turned the phone face down on the counter. My ex. He calls when he wants to remind me of things I don't want to remember. Her voice wasn't angry, just tired. Tired in a way I hadn't heard from her before. Without thinking, I leaned a little closer. Not much, just enough to show I was listening. You don't have to answer, I said softly. I know. She stared at the phone, then at me. That's the problem. She laughed once, sharp, brittle, and pressed her palms together, thumbs rubbing anxiously. There it was again, her guard cracking at the edges. Sometimes, she murmured, I feel like I'm still shrinking myself for him. The sentence hung between us. I opened my mouth to say something. Anything, but the words tangled up. I didn't want to sound protective, or naive, or like I was assuming a place in her life I had no right to assume. But she turned slightly toward me on the stool, knee brushing mine. A small contact. A small shock. "Tell me something honest," she said suddenly. Her voice wasn't commanding. It was searching. I swallowed. My heartbeat felt embarrassingly loud. "Honest," I repeated. She nodded, eyes steady on mine. I could have told her I think about her more than makes sense. That I replay moments she probably forgot. That every time she leaves, I feel the room go colder. But I forced restraint into my voice. "You don't have to shrink around me," I said quietly. Her breath caught, audibly this time. And she didn't look away. The storm slammed against the windows. Her phone buzzed again. She ignored it. Slowly, painfully slowly, she lifted her hand from her lap and rested it near mine on the counter. Not touching, just close enough that one shift forward would bridge the distance. I almost moved. Almost. Then the back door rattled, someone arriving or leaving the building next door. She pulled her hand back, heartbeat visible in her throat. I did too. And for the rest of the night, all I could think about was how close we came to crossing a line that neither of us seemed ready to name. The day everything shifted started with nothing special. Just a slow evening, the shop humming with its usual old machine fatigue. Sam had left early. I stayed behind to finish repairs I wasn't actually finishing, mostly because part of me kept waiting for her. And she did come. Not with a broken device this time. Just herself. She slipped in quietly, closing the door with that same careful gentleness she used when she wasn't sure she should be somewhere. "Did I interrupt?" she asked. "No," I said too quickly. She glanced around, noticing the empty shop, the dimmed lights, the narrow strip of sunset leaking through the blinds. She stepped closer, not enough to touch, but enough to feel. "I needed air," she said, exhaling like she hadn't done so in hours. "And I ended up here." Her voice cracked on here. Barely, but enough for me to hear the weight she'd been carrying. I nodded toward the counter. "Want to sit?" She hesitated, then crossed the room, lowering herself onto the stool with a grace that looked practiced, like she'd spent years pretending she wasn't unraveling. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Silence worked its way between us, sharp, expectant, heavy enough that I could hear my pulse in it. Then she said it. "I don't understand what we're doing." Not angry, not scared, just honest. Brutally, quietly honest. I froze. My breath stalled. She didn't look at me at first. She stared at her hands, fingers worrying the edge of her bracelet, knuckles tightening, loosening, tightening again. "You're younger," she whispered. "Much younger. And I'm not someone who lets people get close. Not anymore." "That's not," I started, but she raised her hand, softly, stopping me without touching me. "Please," she said. "Let me finish." Her eyes finally lifted to mine. They weren't guarded tonight. They were tired and open in a way that scared me more than any physical closeness ever could. "I come here because," she paused, searching for the right words. "Because you feel like someplace I don't ruin." A breath hitched in my throat. She swallowed. "But that scares me too." I didn't know what to say. My mind scrambled between wanting to reassure her, wanting to step back, wanting to step forward, wanting something I didn't have a name for. "I think about you," I said quietly, surprising even myself. "More than I should." Her eyes widened a fraction. Not offended. Not startled. Just seen. She leaned in. Not much, just enough that her knee brushed mine. "Why?" she whispered. I almost laughed, not because it was funny, but because she asked it so sincerely, as if she genuinely didn't know. I exhaled. "I don't have a clean answer. I just know something's happening, and pretending it's not makes it worse." She let that hang between us. The silence felt alive, like something breathing against my skin. Then she pushed her palms against her thighs, grounding herself. "This can't keep going," she whispered. But then, her voice softened, slipped, broke in the middle. "Yet I don't know how to walk away." She looked at me, raw and unprotected in a way I'd never seen. And before I could respond, she delivered the line that hollowed me out completely. I don't know why I feel safe with you, but I do, and that terrifies me. I thought our last conversation would make things clearer, draw a boundary, or at least give us something to stand on. But when she walked into the shop the next evening, it was obvious something had shifted. Not between us, within her. She held her phone like it weighed too much. Her shoulders were drawn tight, her jaw set in a way I hadn't seen before. No sweater, no careful composure, just a simple blouse and the look of someone who'd been holding her breath for hours. I shouldn't be here, she said quietly. But she stepped in anyway. I didn't say anything. I just locked the door behind her because she looked like she needed the world to stop for a second. She placed her phone on the counter, screen down, and exhaled through her nose. A long, shaky breath. You remember when you said you think about me more than you should? She asked without looking up. My heart knocked once hard. Yeah, I said. Her fingers hovered above the phone, then pulled away as if touching it might burn her. I got a voicemail today, she murmured. From someone I haven't heard from in years. The words made the room feel smaller. A friend. I asked carefully. She shook her head. Not exactly. Silence stitched itself between us. She toyed with the bracelet on her wrist, rolling it, pulling it, letting it snap back gently. I wasn't going to listen. Her voice wavered. But I did. Then she picked up the phone, tapped it awake, and handed it to me. Not to play the message, just to show me the screen. A contact name, Aiden under it. One unread voicemail. 2:13 p.m. I didn't press anything. But the name lingered in the air. He was, she swallowed. Someone I loved a long time ago. Not a partner. Not in the way people think. More like, she looked up at me, and her eyes were tight with something deeper. He was the last person who ever listened to me the way you do. Something lodged in my chest. I didn't know what to say. Didn't know if I was supposed to be honored or afraid of what that meant. She continued, voice barely above a whisper. We stopped talking after a fight that wasn't even a real fight. Just life shifting. And hearing his voice today felt like opening a box I buried on purpose. She pressed her fingers to her temples for a moment, grounding herself. And I realized something. Something I didn't want to realize. I leaned forward slowly. What? Her eyes flicked to mine, tired, soft, unguarded. You remind me of him, she said. But not because you look like him. Not because you act like him. She paused. Then she stepped closer, her voice lowering until it felt like a confession meant only for the space between us. You remind me of the version of myself I used to be when he was still in my life. The words hit like a quiet earthquake. No noise, no collapse, just everything shifting at once. I felt something inside me twist, not with jealousy, but with understanding. A deep, unsettling understanding. She reached for her phone again, hesitated, then let her hand fall to her side. He called to apologize, she whispered. But the thing that shook me wasn't his apology. She looked at me, really looked. It was realizing that I wanted to talk to you first. My breath caught. And that scares me more than hearing his voice ever did. She didn't say anything after that. After the confession that I was the person she wanted to talk to instead of the man who once shaped her life. She just stood there, breathing quietly, like she'd finally exhaled something she'd been holding for years and wasn't sure what to do with the empty space it left behind. I didn't step closer. I didn't retreat either. I just let the moment settle, soft and unsteady between us. You don't have to explain anything else, I said. She closed her eyes for a beat, like she was bracing for judgment she didn't want to face. I know, she whispered, but I feel like I should. Her voice was thin around the edges, not fragile, just honest in a way that didn't need volume. She walked slowly to the stool in front of the counter and lowered herself onto it. This time, she didn't sit prim or composed. She sat like someone who'd finally stopped pretending she wasn't tired, back slightly rounded, hands resting palm up in her lap, as if offering them to no one and to me at the same time. I'm not good at this, she admitted. At letting people in. At wanting things that feel complicated. I leaned against the counter, arms loosely crossed, not defensive, just giving her room to breathe. You don't have to be good at it, I said softly. You just have to be real. A small, involuntary smile tugged at the corner of her mouth. The kind that only appears when someone's exhaustion lifts just enough for something gentler to slip through. Real? She repeated, like the word surprised her. We stayed in that soft echo for a moment, her turning the thought over, me trying not to stare at the way her hair brushed her cheek, half dry, half curled from the earlier rain. Can I ask you something? She said. Anything. She looked at me with this strange mix of courage and hesitation. Is this whatever it is hurting you? It wasn't the question I expected. It disarmed me in the quietest way. No, I said. Then, more honestly, it scares me sometimes. But it doesn't hurt. She nodded, absorbing it slowly, like she wanted to believe me, but needed it to settle inside her first. I don't want to ruin your life, she murmured. You're not, I said. You're adding something to it. Something I didn't know I wanted. The silence that followed wasn't heavy this time. It felt like a room exhaling. Then she lifted her hand, barely, tentatively, and placed it on the counter between us. Not reaching for me, not asking me to take it. Just placing it there, palm open, fingers slightly curled inward, as if she were offering a space rather than a touch. I hesitated, because this wasn't a bold whisper or an impulsive closeness. This was her choosing something fragile and real. So I placed my hand beside hers. Not touching, just matching her distance, her pace, her breath. She looked at our hands, so close the warmth almost bridged the gap, and then up at me. This isn't simple, she whispered. No, I agreed. But it's ours. She let out a trembling breath. Not fearful, relieved. Then, with the gentlest movement I've ever felt, she shifted her pinky until it brushed mine. A small, deliberate contact. A quiet collapse into something neither of us had dared name. We didn't speak after that. We didn't need to. We just stayed there, two hands barely touching, two lives leaning closer, letting the silence say the thing we weren't ready to. I'm telling this part from the present, long after the urgency of those early days softened into something steadier. Looking back at it now, I can see the exact night everything changed, though at the time, it didn't feel like a grand turning point. It felt small, quiet, almost forgettable if you weren't paying attention. But we were paying attention. To each other. Finally, I remember waking up the next morning with a clarity I didn't expect. Nothing dramatic had happened between us. Not in the way movies pretend things happen. No breathless confessions. No cinematic kiss. Just two people who had finally stopped lying to themselves long enough to sit in the truth of what they were becoming. And the strange thing is, the peace came first. Before the excitement. Before the fear. Peace. Maybe that was the real sign that what we had wasn't a phase or a crush or a moment fueled by loneliness. It was something that fit, not perfectly, but honestly. The kind of fit that comes from two people who have scraped their knees on life enough times to recognize gentleness when it finally shows up. She changed me, though she'd be embarrassed to hear it said like that. She never tried to. She never shaped me or coached me or asked me to be anything other than who I was. Instead, she made space, real space, for me to figure out who that person actually was. And in that space, I realized how much of myself I'd been holding back from the world. She softened the sharp edges in me. I steadied the shaking places in her. Not by trying, just by being there. And her? She let go of a loneliness she'd been pretending didn't exist. She stopped carrying everything alone. She started laughing more, breathing more deeply, allowing herself to be seen without the armor. She became lighter, not because I lifted anything off her, but because she finally believed she didn't have to hold every burden by herself. People ask me now what the moment was, the moment when I knew. But knowing didn't arrive in a lightning strike. It was a slow accumulation of little things. Her hand brushing mine without hesitation, the way she said my name like it meant something, the silence we could sit in without filling, the way we both kept choosing to stay. That's love, I think. Not the spark, though the spark matters. But the staying, the returning, the choosing. And if you ask me what I learned from all of it, that love doesn't need a grand entrance. Sometimes it arrives like a breath. Sometimes the most important moments are the quiet ones. Two people sitting side by side, deciding without a single word that they're walking forward together. If this story made you feel something, let me know in the comments. Would you want more stories like this?